responders, members of the military, and medical personnel all deal with traumatic events on the job. To cope with the stress, some may turn to alcohol or drugs. Rosecrance offers a program specifically for uniformed service personnel. It's called the Florian Program. Joining us with more is the program director, Dan Degryse. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Amy.
What is the Florian Program all about?
Well, the Florian is the patron saint of firefighters, but it's inclusive to all uniformed service personnel to be responsive to all the men and women in all different uniformed service lines that really put themselves out there to help others.
And you're the director of this program. Let's talk a little bit about your background, because in reading your background, it sounds like you're the ideal person to be the director of this program.
Well, I'm older, so I have a lot of years behind me, but yeah, I spent 30 years in the fire service. I was a firefighter in Chicago. My dad was a police officer. He also was a Marine, so my roots go back both family and work experience myself.
So how did you get involved with this?
So I've always been around mental health and behavioral health. I'll be honest, is that in Chicago I ran our union's EAP program for our 8,000 active and retired members, and we had a rash of suicides that we had about 11 in 2.5 years. And so when I reached out across the country, there were only really 3 programs across the country that focused on first responders, and the Veterans Administration took care of veterans. And so I talked to Rosecrance to see if we can start a program to focus on the men and women in uniformed service lines.
What kind of help do people who've experienced trauma like that, what kind of help can be offered to them?
Well, number one, let's keep in mind that all those men and women honestly have a lot of strengths, and so we want to build on those strengths. A lot of times we get what's called nihilism and a different view of life that the average person doesn't necessarily see on a daily basis. So we want to build on their strengths. We want to talk about one big thing that, and from a therapeutic standpoint, besides talk therapy, really 2 things. Peer support, men and women that have been in their same shoes but have gotten through it. And then number 2, we want to talk about, like DBT, really trying to understand the relationship between the rational mind and the emotional mind. And a lot of times in our line of work that doesn't come together until afterwards.
So you have the mental health component, and then there's also what I mentioned earlier, that some may turn to alcohol or drugs because of the stress and the trauma they've experienced.
Yeah, I think that's in society in general. I think that's an easy access. The question is what comes first, the drinking and the problems, or the problems and the drinking? And I don't want to cast a bad light on veterans or any type of uniformed service personnel, but the cumulative effects of what we are exposed to on a daily basis has a natural effect on us. If we don't get a lot of sleep, we're tired and we're cranky. And we want to kind of change that. A lot of times, from an easy standpoint, alcohol or substances are a quick change in our mood.
When does someone get to the point where they know they need to seek help?
Well, if somebody tells them,
okay.
Number 1, or number 2, internally, it's just really the desire to change. And then the question are there organizations like Rosecrance that will support that? We know for the veterans, the VA is there, but let's be honest, over the last 2 decades, with all the men and women that have been exposed to all the trauma, they're overwhelmed. And so we are part of the Veterans Affairs Community Care Network, which we're very proud to be, and we've always served veterans, and now we can actually, from an accessibility standpoint, serve them quicker, more efficiently, and without much cost barrier.
So what would be the first step for someone who wants to seek help?
Make the call. Give us a call, and if they, and start the conversation, really. It's about communication, and that's why it's so great to be in front of you. If there's a veteran out there that needs help, call our line.
That's good advice. All right, thanks so much for joining us this afternoon and telling us about this project. It's really important.
Yeah, thanks for having us.